Hey guys, it's Ben, because, like, let's be honest, who the fuck else would it be? I didn't expect to make this video. Defending The Last Jedi, I didn't expect it to need, well, not necessarily need, but, yeah, sure, need defending, because it has a lot of detractors. If you didn't like it, that's fine, that's okay, whatever. I don't have a problem with people disliking it as much as maybe the title might imply. I just think that it could do with some defending, and that there are some common complaints that do come up. I'll criticize the movie as well, as well as defending it, because I don't think it's a perfect movie. I'm even conflicted on whether I think it's better than Force Awakens, which is not something I expect. I expected to love it, and I really like it, but I don't love it yet. But I've only seen it once, and I had an eye infection, like, that came on during the movie, so I had to watch most of the film with one eye closed. That wasn't too fun, hence also why it took me so long to make this. But, you know, maybe I'll see it again, and I'll love it even more. I probably will. And I think that comes down to expectations, and now I know what to expect. It's more likely that I'm going to enjoy it, and that, I think, is where a lot of the hate comes from. So let's start with that, because I think that's probably the core point here. Expectations. Not necessarily expectations being too high, although there is that as well, of course. But just that people expect certain characters to be treated in certain ways. And we're going to get into spoilers here, so if you've not seen Last Jedi, personally, I would highly recommend that you see it. I think even a lot of people who kind of dislike it would say, go watch it. It's like a national obligation, almost. It's fucking Star Wars, right? So for the last 2 years, since Force Awakens, people have been theorizing, they've been building up characters in their heads, they've been having all of these expectations of what are they going to do, which doesn't sound like an expectation, but when you're thinking what they're going to do, you probably have a few ideas in mind, and if it doesn't do any of those, and the thing that it does do, you're like, not too happy with that, then you're probably going to be disappointed, and it's going to be so jarring that even if you end up watching it again maybe, and coming to terms with it, and like being more accepting of it, that initial like, that feels weird. That feeling is a tough one to kind of overcome, and it happens a lot. It happens from the first thing that Luke does, is tossing the lightsaber behind him. That is unexpected, and it kind of just goes throughout the entire movie in terms of, fuck you, we're not doing it how you probably want us to do it. And in some ways that can be good, in some ways it can be bad. And I think this film really does push it, and it's pushed it so far that for many people it's gone too far. It's gone well outside of the comfort zone of you know, the way to treat these characters and the way to treat the Force as well, and we'll get into that later. But let's focus on the characters for now. So Luke, seems like a lot of people aren't too happy of how, like, grouchy he is and, like, unwilling to train Rey, and then ends up, like, sure, he kind of trains her, but he mainly trains her about, and teaches her about, how bad the Jedi are, and why they should probably end, because that's just the kind of conclusion that he's come to. Personally, I love that. I absolutely love when he's talking about how shit the Jedi are. It's like, actually, the Jedi aren't that great. And I'm like, yes, thank you. Finally, someone in these fucking movies says it, and someone as important as Luke says it, and I really do love that. But a lot of people might not, and that comes because you think, oh, it's Luke. Luke's a Jedi. He's Jedi Master. He's gone to find the first Jedi Temple, right? So surely he must be just surrounding himself with all this Jedi knowledge, and he must treasure it. But actually, he doesn't. He's there, but he doesn't actually care about being necessarily there too much. Like, you kind of find out when Yoda starts burning the sacred tree or whatever with the books in. It doesn't actually have the books in, but with the books in. That he still has a bit in him that does care about it, and Rey starts to bring that out more and more in him. But overall, he's quite grouchy, and you know, I totally get why people are quite disappointed with the training, because he doesn't really train her. There's a little bit of training there, and I think what we get is pretty cool. But people expected like a huge training montage or something like that. Really going maybe a bit more in depth on certain things, and having like a lightsaber fight with them two together, I think was probably a big thing that many people were expecting and maybe disappointed that they didn't get. And in the end, really, Luke drives Rey away. Rey is like, okay, you're not fucking helping me, and I'm going to go to Kylo because it seems like he's the only one who kind of gets me, and maybe he can help, and maybe he can help me figure out my place in all this. And that's the whole idea, is that she, without her parents, she's always searching for something to show her place in everything. And she hoped that she would find it with Luke, but surprise, and it is quite a big surprise, that's not the case. And then she tries to find it in Kylo, and then she doesn't quite find it there either. And it's all this lesson being taught to her of like, only you can really tell yourself like where you belong, and essentially make your own destiny, sort of thing. Despite, kind of going against what Snoke is saying of like, this is your destiny, you must follow it, you'll fall into it. Also kind of going against what both Rey and Kylo are saying, like, no, I know what's going to happen, this is going to happen. And personally, I think all of that is really cool. It was unexpected, it might be disappointing for various reasons, because there's a lot of cool, that's the thing with Star Wars, especially with these characters that we love. There's so many cool and great ideas for scenes, like Rey training with a lightsaber, with Luke instead of with a rock, Luke having a proper lightsaber fight. There's a lot, and when this film says fuck you, we're not actually really going for any of that, I can't blame people too much for not liking that because of it. But a lot of it does come from expectations, and I think a lot of the very harsh critics of it are, this isn't the film I wanted it to be. And maybe you're not like that. I think there are plenty of legitimate criticisms, don't get me wrong. But I think quite a few do come from, hey, why did this happen when I wanted this to happen? This should have happened because this happened and that was stupid. And sure, you can think of things stupid. You can think that your way is better or whatever. Personally, I just take it and try to accept it, because otherwise I'm just going to hate like almost every film, because it's not going to give me the exact thing I want. And especially in something like Star Wars, I've just come to expect the unexpected in a sense. I walked into this film, my only expectation, I guess, was that I was going to love it. And I didn't love it. I really liked it. But I didn't expect necessarily anything specifically from the plot. There were some things I was maybe hoping for, but that was usually only in the moment when I was watching the film. Like when Kylo is talking about destroying the dark side and the light and just having this new thing of just a new thing, right? Like the Grey Jedi, which I had heard quite a bit about. I was like, oh shit, this could be really cool. I really hope that Rey does this. But she still sees that really Kylo just kind of wants a lot of power, and so she chooses not to go with him. And I thought that was a shame, because I just think in my mind, like, wouldn't that be cool? But I also think, wait, but how would they do another film at that point? What would actually be the conflict? I think that was one of the reasons why that could have potentially been amazing. Yeah, again, I know I'm doing the whole thing that I'm criticizing here. Kylo and Rey ending up fighting against Luke and Leia, although unfortunately not Leia. That could have been a huge twist on everything. Maybe they're fighting Finn and Poe because they're all in disbelief. Like, what the fuck are you doing? You've turned to the dark side clearly, and she's trying to explain, but maybe they just don't get it across. Anyway, I think that could have been cool, but I'm not going to let that be my headcanon. I'm very accepting of this is the film they wanted to do. This is the film. I know a lot of people are saying, well, Rian Johnson just came in and ruined it all. And I do think it's crazy how much control he seemingly had. But with shit like Star Wars, this goes through a lot of people. Even though he's the writer, this goes through editors and a bunch of people, a bunch of consultants who have to give it the okay. And they did. and it's okay. So getting away from expectations a little bit, it's kind of an overarching theme of this video, so we'll be coming back to it in ways here and there. More specific. Rose. Rose is a character that a lot of people seem to have a problem with. And the worst offenders of this. So when I say defending this, and when I am trying to counter criticism and stuff, I'm not saying every single person who criticizes the movie or who doesn't like the movie hates it because of these things, and that's why you're wrong or whatever. You're not necessarily wrong. But I have some of the worst comments I've seen, because it's the internet, what do you expect? Some of the worst comments I've seen for Rose are, I've literally seen she is SJW leftist propaganda. You may be surprised to find that. I don't buy into that. And you can call me an SJW. Personally, don't use terms like that. I don't just label people. Like, even the person who made that comment, I don't label him as an alt-right person, because I don't know the person. Who the fuck am I to judge their entire character off that? I think they're kind of an idiot for saying it, but that's about it. I wouldn't be any more specific. So of course, little political, and it's funny because I also saw a thing. I mean, you guys can watch it. Maybe you'll love it. The Sargon of Akkad, which I couldn't get through the whole video. That I just was like, how can you watch films like this and enjoy them through this lens of everything is propaganda and trying to push something political at us, and it is in a way. Don't get me wrong. It's trying to push certain messages, like the animal cruelty and stuff. I don't think that's political. I think that's just being a human and trying to be a good one. But especially with the whole weapons dealing, which I thought was really cool, because it shows, just like Luke complaining about the Jedi, that the good side isn't necessarily as good as you might think. And I think that's really cool. It's getting audiences to think about that stuff more in terms of Star Wars, but then also maybe in terms of real life, which I think is kind of a cool way to do it, and it fits in. It doesn't feel too out there. I think that was probably my favourite aspect of DJ's character, the fact that he says that, and probably my favourite part of the whole Canto Bite bit, which I thought was personally the weakest section, the bit that I liked the least, to say nicely. So anyway, back to these other criticisms of Rose. She's leftist propaganda because she's a woman and she's Asian, and some people seem to think that she's fat. I'm not gonna lie, she's got quite a broad face, and I guess just because she wears a baggy jumpsuit, people think that she's fat, but she's not. Like, you look at the actress in almost any picture, she's really not in any way, but people seem to think that she is. So of course, it's pushing the body positive agenda, which is just so awful. And doesn't belong in Star Wars. But people seem to think that Star Wars has never been political, and it's never been pushing any sort of agenda in any way, just because they're only starting to notice it now, and maybe they agreed with whatever agenda it was pushing before. But Star Wars has always been political, and a political allegory in some sense, and that's fine. That's one of the coolest things about media, is how it can train people to see things in real life in a certain way, not necessarily manipulate them, but just get their brains thinking about these certain things. Like, they start thinking about this universe and this world, and then they're like, oh shit, but that reminds me of this thing that I might have seen on the news. And I know if I'm defending a character like Rose, I must be a terrible far left SJW feminist, but whatever. I'm not even fully defending her character. I'm just saying, if you want to criticize her, you can properly criticize her. I think her character is worthy of criticism. I think some of the things that she does and says, especially at the end of the film, are possibly the worst parts of the film. I don't think that's the actress's fault, obviously. She's just doing what she was given. I think she did a good job with what she was given, personally. But the way to criticize her isn't that. It's just... That's a really nothing criticism. It's saying, because it makes me uncomfortable, or because I think that this is what they were trying to push, then this is why it's bad, because I was made uncomfortable by it or something. Which, like I said, God, I can't watch films through that lens. Fuck, unless it's, you know, an obviously heavily, heavily political film, but those people would of course argue that every film is very political, and in a way it is. But god damn, thinking about it, and that I want to kill myself. I just couldn't enjoy things anymore. That'd be awful. Anyway, people saying that she's like the new Jar Jar Binks. What the fuck are you on about? Seriously, she's got a few comedy elements, I guess, but she's not CGI, and she's not Misa, so sorry, or whatever the fuck Jar Jar Binks says. Like, I actually remember some of the things that she says, and she's a character. She's not a caricature, she's a character. Maybe not my favourite new character or anything, but she is one. She's not just the comedic relief. If you want to compare anything to Jar Jar, then compare the Porgs to Jar Jar. Which, you know, whatever. I think they're, like, kind of Jar Jar, but work. Even though they're actually close to the Ewoks. But if you're going to compare anything, compare the Porgs. Not a human female character. Like, you can complain about a character, but Jar Jar, a little too far. So that was Rose, and I know I didn't defend her like a bunch, but I think that's because a lot of it, like movies in general, comes down to taste. Whether you liked her writing, you liked her performance or not, is very much just a taste sort of thing. And it's just specific criticisms that I feel like I can maybe defend her from. Like how my main problem with her just came at the end of the movie, and that was more of a problem with just how the movie used her. As it felt like a forced relationship with Finn. Like, really? I know you've heard a lot about him and you're kind of a fangirl, but really? It was pretty cheesy, her whole line about saving the ones we love and not killing the ones we hate. It's like, no, but you kind of literally have to do both of those things in a war. It's really nice to think otherwise, but you're not gonna win otherwise. You just aren't. I'm just gonna keep saving people. They're all gonna die eventually if you don't start killing some of the others. And I think actually her character would have been a lot better, or would have had a more satisfying ending, if instead of, for some reason, endangering both of their lives, if she actually sacrificed herself and went into the, like, somehow she nudged Finn out of the way and went into the Death Star tech thing and destroyed it herself. That could have been really cool, because I would have legitimately got kind of emotional at that, because she's very sweet and quite innocent. And to have, you know, her come in and then die, like, so suddenly could have been, like, because I was already quite emotional over the idea that, oh shit, is Finn gonna die now? And then she comes in, I'm like, oh, you ruined the moment, you really ruined the moment, and now neither of you are dead, and yeah. Anyway, that's a criticism, totally agree with that one. Anyway, back to the defending bit. Snoke and Snoke's death. I'm fine with it. I wasn't fine with it initially. I was like, you fucking what? You fucking want me? You just gonna kill me? Just like that? Just like that? Okay, I see how it is. Oh, that's true. And then I got out of the film and I was like, actually, not too bothered that he's dead, but it made for a great shocking moment that pretty much shocked fucking everybody. Nobody expected Snoke to just die. Such like a big new character that you thought was going to be so important, and that's my thing with expectations. Everybody expects, like, we're going to get backstory on Snoke, we're going to see a bunch of Snoke's powers and doing things, and we saw like a glimpse of it, and that was one of the disappointments with me, because you saw that little bit of electricity, and that was the thing. While I didn't go in with expectations while I was watching it, that bit of electricity made me like, oh shit, what's he going to do next? Die was the answer. And that's a surprise. That's such a twist of expectations, and I end up enjoying and respecting that a lot more than the alternative of, okay, cool, you see a bunch of his powers. I think maybe a way that probably would have pleased more people is that you see Kylo and Rey fight him, and they kill him by just like an actual fight. I don't know how they would have defeated him if it was a full-on fight, but still, that probably would have got a lot of people like hyped up, because they would have seen a lot of his powers and all of that. But it's nowhere near as shocking to see them kill him after a fight. It is just he suddenly just dies. He's dead. So people's complaints as well about his death was like, how could he not see the whole lightsaber being turned? Well, in Kylo's mind, because he was sensing Kylo's mind, he was saying turning the lightsaber towards the enemy. He doesn't say Rey, he says enemy. So in his mind reading or whatever, because nobody's certain on how it works, you don't know how vague or whatever it is. That's the point of the Force. It's supposed to be quite vague, and that's one of the things I like about it. Even though a lot of people like to enforce rules on it and act as though it's this really specific thing, but it's not. Even if you want to believe midichlorians, fuck that shit. It's not specific. Leave it alone. So he thinks, and in Kylo's mind, he just sees the enemy. But what he doesn't see is that the enemy is actually him. And I think that's pretty cool. And then people are like, but, you know, when he was bridging their minds and stuff, but I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, because, like I said, I've only seen it once, that they do see each other again. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's when Rey is going on to the Millennium Falcon, and she sees Kylo again. They bridge minds again. So my personal theory is, I know I'm joining with the theorists now, is that he wasn't ever actually bridging their minds. He was listening in, like, sensing their conversations, but really it's something to do with the Force, and they're connected anyway, because even after he died, unless they're going to reveal that he's actually alive somehow. God, I'd hate that kind of. It'd be also another twist, but I kind of not sure if I'd be a big fan of that. But this is the thing with Star Wars, you just don't know what's going to happen, and that's one of the things I like most about it, and anything could piss anybody off, and there's just so many crazy fucking things that happen, or don't happen, and you're shocked that they didn't happen, like Luke properly training Rey, like Snoke properly using his powers, that you're gonna piss off people. This film could have done something insane that I absolutely hated, and it kind of did at one point, but fortunately, I guess for me, I just wasn't really all that pissed off by too many of the things. The only thing I was kind of bothered about, which again was kind of playing on my expectations yet again, was Leia's death. Like, she dies, but she doesn't die. And you totally think she's dead because, you know, Carrie Fisher's dead, so you think, that's how they're going to do it. And then you're like, oh, what? Okay, cool. Yeah, sure. Okay, yeah. Alright, sure. It looked really silly. It looked really fucking silly. So I know that in the books, before the prequels were a thing, the way they explained Anakin becoming Darth Vader, that how he got all burned up was he got covered in molten lava. Like, he might have even fallen into a volcano, like fully fallen into it, and then he created a force shield around him to protect him from that, and that's so he obviously got very burned, but he didn't die from it because he's really powerful, obviously. And I was like, okay, so they're kind of doing the same thing here, except you don't see a sort of force shield. She just looks frozen and dead, and then floats like that, just completely stiff, which, you know, you would be if you were frozen. It just could have looked better. It just could have looked a lot cleaner. Could have been more obvious that it was the Force that was protecting her around, because maybe that was their angle. If it wasn't, and really space just isn't nearly as deadly as you'd think, to especially Force users, I guess, then that's a little fucking stupid. Anyway, moving on back to the defending. Snoke's death was cool. It was unexpected, it was out of nowhere, and my main thing that I really like about it is that Kylo is fucking great. To me, I love Kylo. He is one of the strongest, if not the strongest, parts of the new trilogy. I love Adam Driver's acting, I love the way he's conflicted all the time, and, actually conflicting, and you can probably see his frustration with that, and it's not just kind of an emo frustration, like everybody likes to call him emo and stuff. And yeah, emo is an emotional, sure, but not really like dark and brooding all the time, just like properly outward emotion. It not like Anakin in prequels, like how an actual person would function if they had these two massive conflicts in their mind and in their powers as well. And I love that. And I love the idea that he is the leader now of the First Order. Somebody who is so fucking nuts, so crazy, just not stable in any way, is leading like the biggest army in the universe? That is insane. And the opportunities, which who knows if they'll capitalize on them, but I think they already had in the second half of this film. The opportunities for that are wonderful. I love it because he is far more interesting than Snoke, who is just another Emperor character. Like, think about it. He is just another Emperor. He looked cool, sure. Everybody like that face has a story, and I'm sure it will have a story in like a book or something. But you don't need to know everybody's story. You didn't know the Emperor's story until the prequels. You didn't know Obi-Wan's. All these people, for some reason, people keep demanding backstories. People keep needing to know the history of things, as if Star Wars has always done that and done a really good job of that. But it's not. It really hasn't. Pretty much the entire time. I mean, it's done that in the sense there were prequels, so of course there was a history. So people just kind of expected that because there were entire movies dedicated to backstory, I suppose. But the ones that weren't didn't have it. They didn't have it shoved in there. They didn't have flashbacks or anything like that, as far as I can remember. They were just, here are some characters, enjoy them. This is how they are now. Maybe you'll get hints of their past and stuff here and there, but you don't get a super detailed thing about Leia and Han and Luke. Even you know that Darth Vader ends up being his father. That's about it. You still don't know a huge amount about him until the prequels, of course. So personally, I'm just quite confused about how much people think that they're going to get a bunch of backstory. I mean, it's nice. It's nice to want that, I suppose, and I get people wanting it, but the expectation of it, based on 4, 5, and 6, and 7 as well, really. Why? Why do you expect such things? Yeah, they're not a part of Star Wars. To me, Star Wars is more about the characters as they're presented, and the emotion behind that. Like the best lightsaber fights aren't the flashiest ones, they're the ones that have importance behind them, they have emotion. And that's what's been so good about the new ones, I think. I think they're really well choreographed as well. They're like flashier than 4, 5, and 6, but not as over the top as 1, 2, and 3. As much as I like 1, 2, and 3 in terms of a spectacle sort of way, these are just a perfect mix of that. Nobody's like jumping crazily anywhere, doing backflips and stuff like that, but there is emotion and effort and anger put into everything, but it still looks pretty fucking cool at the same time. And I think they've nailed it. I think they've nailed that part perfectly. And I'm really fascinated to see how much further they go. And I think maybe because those fights are so good is why people are quite disappointed that Luke didn't get his proper lightsaber fight. And I can understand that. But also he's really old. And a lot of people argue, maybe rightly so, that 7 built up a lot of these things. But I would argue that primarily the build-up comes from the 2 years, and people just constantly think about this universe and its characters, which is a testament to the universe and its characters, for so long that they're like, what are they going to do in this? How are they going to use them? And when they're killed off without being used enough, people get really angry. And while I can understand that, I was like, cool, sure, that's fine. Because primarily that build-up has come from the expectations, people's heads just going wild on this stuff. When 7 didn't actually give you much. 7 gave you a hologram of Snoke and said, come back to complete his training. That is one thing that I think maybe 7 did build up. I don't think it necessarily built up Snoke as like this huge person who, like, obviously he had some importance, but he wasn't as important to the story as people expected him to be. However, he does say, like, we're going to complete his training, And while he yells at Kylo a bit, and I really like that scene, you don't really see him fully training him. And that is something that you totally thought was going to happen based on the last film. I totally did. And it doesn't. And that, sure, that is like an expectation that's set, especially it's so ominous. It's like it's time to complete his training. You're like, oh shit, what does complete his training mean? And then it, who knows? Who knows what it meant? Maybe it means making him powerful enough to trick me and kill me. Whatever. But Snoke isn't that important. He actually isn't. He is another representation of the past, just like Luke and Leia and a bunch of other things that get killed off and thrown away in this movie. I'm not saying Leia does, but obviously she will do. And that's quite unfortunate because it seemed like they were hoping that she was going to be like the kind of last beacon sort of thing of the rebels, of like the old guard or whatever. And now they can't have her be that. And it's quite surprising that even with Carrie Fisher's death, that they still kept Luke dying, because now there's none of that. But it really sticks with the kill the past, which is the theme of this film. And Snoke is a representation of that in a way. He represents the Emperor, essentially. He's just another Emperor. And I guess people just didn't want to see him as that. They wanted him to be so much more. But you look at him, he's got a fucked up old man face, maybe a bit more fucked up than the Emperor, but he's kind of the same role. He's the same role. Now Kylo is that, and he doesn't have like a Darth Vader under him. He doesn't have a Kylo under him. He has a fucking General Hux or whatever, and he's a great punching bag. He's a fantastic punching bag. So I love that. I love that the dynamic is completely changed now. It's completely different, completely new. I love that in fights you can expect him to be like, fuck, fighting strategically. How about you all just focus fire on the Millennium Falcon? Okay, everybody focus fire on Luke. Let's play into his trap, because I'm such an emotional wreck. Like, at least he's got a reason for it. I don't think he's necessarily just an idiot. He's just, I mean, there's part of that, but he's just got so much rage and anger in him, and now he has the means to just take it out on whoever, wherever, whatever, and that's kind of fascinating to me, and it should make for a really fun episode 9, because goddamn, Kylo is so good to me. I just adore him. I think Kylo, Luke, and Rey are the like heart of this film. They are by far the best parts, by far. Mark Hamill does a fantastic job as Luke. I think he plays him really well. Whether he wanted to see Luke like this or not, I think he still lives up to what he was given. He doesn't seem to just not give a fuck because he disagrees with the script or whatever. He really gives it his all, and I love that. So speaking of Luke, let's talk about Luke dying. People not too happy with Luke dying, it seems. He's probably going to come back as a Force Ghost in the next one. Willing to bet that, so don't be too sad, maybe. And I think they wanted him to die more like Obi-Wan, with him actually being there and dying during a fight, and maybe that would have been more powerful. But first of all, I think it does a really cool job at setting up the Force with the whole astral projection thing. That sets up the Force and a new Force power in a completely different way. It shows off something new, and also maybe just how demanding it was. Like, it took so much out of Luke that he died, or like at least became at peace, and it seemed he just faded out because he became one with the Force. Kind of like how Obi-Wan did, but he just didn't get to go quite as peacefully because he looked like he got struck down, but he just kind of... yeah. And I thought that was a beautiful shot. And the way it just kind of came back on itself, it's Luke again staring off into the sunset, just like episode 4. I thought that was gorgeous. I loved that ending. It just felt quite poetic, even if it's something that maybe, yet again, messing with people's expectations, maybe, that's not how they wanted him to die, but it is how he did, and I think it's quite a beautiful way for him to do so. Whether it's necessarily as satisfying, I don't think it really cared about it being satisfying in that sense. They wanted it to just look very nice, and I think they did a good job of that. The problem is that wasn't the final shot of the movie, it was the fucking kid, which, yet again, gets across the point of that Rey's parents are nobody, that point of anybody can have the Force. The Force is universal. Anybody can kind of tap into it. But the idea is that the next Jedi, the next Rey or whatever, can come from anywhere. And I think that's quite a nice, pretty message that, it's not, hey, you gotta be a Skywalker or whatever. And it's cool, but I don't think they necessarily need to end the film with that, because you had such a good moment with Luke there. It's a real shame. But that's the other thing that quite a few people are disappointed about. Yet again, it's because for 2 years people have been theorizing, who will raise parents? Who will raise parents? They built up so much. Like, I don't think they did. I mean, maybe J.J. Abrams kind of did, because he's J.J. Abrams and he loves his mysteries, he loves his fucking mystery boxes. And I really appreciate Rian Johnson saying, fuck you, J.J. Abrams. I really hope J.J. doesn't come back in the next film, because he's directing Episode 9, and say, oh, surprise, he's lying, and they're actually really important. Because I really respect Rian Johnson saying, fuck you, fucking mystery boxes. The parents are nobody. They're nobody. Too bad. Too bad. Fuck all your theories. Oh, but she could be Rey Kenobi. She could be fucking Skywalker. She could be, related to the new... She could be related to Snoke or something. Or one of the first Jedi, or whatever. There's a ton of theories about it. And because it's fun to theorize, and I do agree that it's fun to theorize, what's more fun to me is just the idea that, hey, she doesn't have to be connected to this. She is just her own person. We don't need to have yet another Skywalker, because they've already had their own couple of trilogies. Why does everything in the universe have to revolve around this one fucking family? Maybe you can argue that that's the will of the Force, and the Force is so strong with them that, it just kind of brings people together around them. But I appreciate the message of the Force can be strong with a lot of different people. It's not necessarily all about the Skywalkers. It has been for 4, 5, and 6, because it was their story. Now it's not their story, and this film makes that really clear. It's not their story. Out with the old, in with the new. And a lot of people aren't going to like that. And sure, but it's a new trilogy, and it's new characters, and I appreciate that. I appreciate how ballsy this film was. Even if I didn't think it pulled it off at all the times it tried to. Like with Leia. Like with Canto Bight. I thought Canto Bight visually was pretty great. I just thought it went on for a little too long. The tone of it felt so different from the rest of the film, the rest of the stuff that was going on that felt so important, and what they were doing was important. But the way it was presented, it felt a little more goofy, more adventure, more fun, and maybe it's just because they wanted to have that, because they were like, God, we're a little too serious here, guys, even though we've got porgs and stuff, but maybe we should have a more fun, rollicking adventure in there, and I don't think that necessarily paid off. However, I do respect it for even trying to do that, for doing something that kind of broke away. It felt the most prequel-y, that's for sure. But in a way, I kind of appreciate it feeling more like that than like Episode 5, right? Because Episode 7, as much as I liked it, was no doubt it was just like a retreading of Episode 4. The new characters and stuff, so I was like, okay, that's fine. But this can't rely too much on Episode 5, and I don't think it did. And I think that's one of the primary examples of that. It is completely different. It is so different from anything that happened in Episode 5, or pretty much any of the other films. It does what the prequels do, in terms of showing off this, wow, amazing, like, isn't this so cool, because it's really flashy and it's got a lot of CG, except obviously the CG is quite good now. And it's using characters that we care about, or that I personally care about. So some people might not, like fucking Finn and Rose. Oh god, they were awful. I just didn't think maybe their chemistry was high enough, or I think it's just mainly the way they were written. Because when you see them, especially off camera, and even bits that were on camera, there's a bit of the behind the scenes that I've seen, they do seem to click. But the writing, I don't think, just served them well enough, which is a real shame. And like I said, I appreciate some of the messages that were a part of the Canto Bight scene, especially the explanation of, hey, Rebels and First Order buy guns from us. That's just how it works. That's the way the world works. Everybody needs weapons. Not the good guys don't just fucking make their own weapons from flowers. They need to buy it from awful people, because that's how weapons are manufactured a lot of the time. Not really by great people, but by people who get rich off of war. And that's obviously a reflection on real life. And if you hate that in your Star Wars film, then hey, that sort of thing has been in every other Star Wars film, just maybe it's been a little more subtle. Because those two messages were definitely not subtle at all. But I still appreciate them all the same, and how it kind of grew the universe, the galaxy, the world of Star Wars in that sense, and I do like that. Okay, so yes, I'm adding this in after. That's why things look a little bit different, because this video just wasn't long enough as it is, and this is just a little bit talking about Holdo and that stuff that I know some people had a problem with as well, that I kind of left out, and kind of defending it, but also not, because I think it's probably one of the worst parts of the movie in terms of like plot holes as well. You can pick plenty of plot holes in a lot of Star Wars stuff, but because I've said all that I have said already, don't really care about a lot of them. That's you know, of all the films and trilogies in terms of caring about plot holes, Star Wars is probably one of the ones that I care least about in terms of like. But if they jump out at you like they do here, then I can't not care about them. And the main thing is that she doesn't tell Poe about her plan, even when he's going through the coup. I get it at first. She's stubborn. She doesn't tell him about the plan. She's like, no, you just fall in line. And that's the lesson that I guess Poe learns in this. I mean, he actually learns about not being too hot-headed, and he's the one to say, no, we need to run away, we can't fight this. That's what we need to do now, we need to run. And I love that. But he's taught through this character who doesn't necessarily teach him that. I mean, she kind of does in a way, but it's through getting him to fall in line and just blindly follow orders, which, I mean, he doesn't do, and then he gets punished for that as well. But blindly following orders doesn't seem like a great lesson either, honestly. Respecting authority, maybe, but blindly following orders, not so much. My main thing is that even when he's doing the coup, she doesn't come out with, oh, hey, no, wait, before you go through with this, we do actually have a plan. Sorry for not telling you earlier or whatever, but hey, here's the plan. Because when Leia tells him later, he's like, yeah, that could work, oh shit. He accepts it. And if she just did that, maybe it would have been okay. But it felt very forced, just a reason, because they had to have Finn and Rose and Poe doing something, right? Doing something while all this was going on. And it's a shame, because I think there's something could have been, maybe they write something in there where they have to get on to the Imperial Star Destroyer or something like that. I don't know, something that's not the Casino Planet. In my opinion, as kind of fun as that was in a sense, but they didn't. Holdo just comes off as a really annoying character, and then even when you realise she was right, I was like, oh, but wait, but why didn't you just, we could have avoided all this, now I kind of hate you even more. And then she has one of the absolute best parts of the movie in terms of, like, the shot of going through the Star Destroyer at light speed is beautiful. The way the sound cuts out, just thinking about it is giving me tingles. It is absolutely it is absolutely phenomenal. Visually stunning. I love it so much. So the thing I do like about this, as much as I hate it in terms of a plot hole, what it does do is kind of keep you on the edge of your seat. And while I hate what they did to put me on this emotional roller coaster, the emotional roller coaster itself I actually really liked. So I love the whole, okay, they don't seem to have a plan, despair. Okay, Poe's got a plan. Oh, it's going really well. Oh, fuck, that plan fell through. Oh, but they've actually had a plan all along. They've got a backup plan that can work. Oh, and then that one fails as well. And you're like, fuck, oh my god, just everything is just going wrong. I totally didn't expect this backup plan to go wrong, because usually that's the saving grace, right? It's like, oh no, it's fine, we got it sorted out. It was just like, you know, a tease of it might go wrong, but no, it does. It falls through, and it's like, holy shit! Just that emotional roller coaster for me was a fantastic part of the film. really, really good. I think it sucks. It sucks that it's tied to such an annoying plot hole contrivance. But other than that, the thing I will defend is that up and down that I didn't expect. I really don't expect from any sort of mainstream film. And overall in this film, the fact that I felt the characters were in danger when they were in danger. I felt like any of these characters could die. Who knows? Because especially after Snoke's gone, you're like, who the fuck are they going to do next? What's going to happen? And that I loved. The only other real complaint that I can think of is the humour, and yeah, sometimes I agree it may be a little too slapstick. I thought the humour overall worked better in Force Awakens. I think overall Force Awakens is a much slicker movie. It's better paced. There's not a dull moment in that film, I think. It just feels very slick and polished, and this feels a lot messier, but I kind of respect it for that, and I think its highs are higher than anything in Force Awakens. Specifically, the Snoke dying and the fight with Rey and Kylo is fucking phenomenal, I think. And then from there onwards, I think the movie is just really fantastic. It seems like also most people loved Yoda coming back, which is great because I loved it as well. I think that's one of the best scenes in the film as well. It is so good. It's great that he's his own fucking trolly dickish self, which I saw the Red Letter Media review of it, which fairly bad. Like they hate on it a lot, but it doesn't. Sometimes sure they say stuff that I disagree with, and I may be a little hyperbolic depending on how you look at things. Obviously, if you fucking hate the film, then I'm sure whatever they say isn't hyperbolic in any way to you. They mention about Yoda and how in episode 5 he was just that way because he was fucking with Luke, and it's really weird to see him come back and he's the version of himself who was actually only pretending to be, because actually he's a pretty chill guy. But really, I think that's just kind of part of his personality. He just has these two sides to him. That, one is the more fun-loving, I'm gonna be a fucking troll and be a bit of a prankster. It's just a prank, bro. It's fine. It's just a lightning prank. It's just a lightning prank. It's fine. The books weren't even in there. Don't worry. Rey already has all the knowledge she needs. That was a great line. That was a great bit of foreshadowing to Rey actually having the books. That was really wonderful. His voice was great. I love that it was the puppet. All really, really wonderful. And yeah, because he's just yet again he's back to fucking with Luke because he just wants to have fun, He's not trying to be old and wise. He's dead. Might as well have some fun with it, right? So that's my perspective on it anyway. But it seems like thankfully a lot of people were pretty grateful for Yoda being like that and just having a great scene. What they weren't too happy about is like a ghost can call down lightning, and yeah, sure, why not? To me, like it's the Force. I don't enforce rules on it because it's vague, and a lot of the people complaining about the astral projection and that. But more so the astral projection and maybe the mind bridging or whatever sound like maybe people who have, like, imagine if you've just seen A New Hope and then you get to episode 5 or is it episode 6 where you finally see the Force lightning. Imagine if you got to that film and then complain like, Force, that's not how the Force works. Force lightning, that's how you sound. Like, that's how it sounds, because of course in your mind, because most people were born after the films were out. Not most people, but you know what I mean. A lot of fans were. So they just had the original trilogy just there. So all the knowledge that is in that original trilogy, they had from the start. But imagine if you hadn't. It's just like with this, Just because that original trilogy exists, and your knowledge of the Force exists only within that, doesn't mean it can't be expanded upon. That's fucking boring. Why? Why would you not want it to be played around with a little bit? I just don't see why you take something as vague, as admittedly vague, and everybody says they want it to be vague because they hate midichlorians. Why would you want something so vague to also be so specific at the same time? That's my main confusion with it. I get people wanting a universe like Star Wars to respect its own rules, Not maybe like real physics or whatever, but have its, own universe rules and respect those. And it's like, but a lot of the rules that people seem to be thinking are a part of the universe are just things that they've put on it themselves. And just don't, especially when it comes to the Force. With other things, maybe sure, like, especially with Leia. But with a lot of the other things, like, why not? Just because it's not happened before doesn't mean it can't happen. If you go and ask, oh, but why didn't this character do that? If that's possible, why didn't this character do that in the past? Then you could go on like that for hours about tons of things, about tons of films, from Star Wars, Harry Potter. You can just pull everything apart with that. For me, personally, I don't find it too important. It's the characters, the emotion, the world in terms of, just kind of getting lost in it. That is Star Wars to me. That's my favourite part. So Yoda was really funny, but it doesn't seem like everybody loves the humour. And the humour, I'm not going to try and defend it, because some things I didn't love. Personally, I love the Porgs, but while I was watching them, I was like, God, if I didn't love these Porgs, I'd be really hating this right now. So if you hate the Porgs, then I don't got much to say. Like, sure, I can't, sure. Whatever. Humour is so subjective that, of course, some people are going to hate the humour in this film. That's something I'm not even going to try and defend, because it's humour. It's subjective. Whatever. So, I think, those aren't my entire thoughts on Last Jedi. God, it's a big movie. It's 2.5 hours. That's probably part of the problem. But I think I just wanted to say some things about it, really. I just wanted to ramble, because I've been thinking a lot about Last Jedi, and I do think it's a really good film, and most of the reasons why I think it's good are because it did stuff that I just didn't expect, for better and worse, and I think that's great, and now I have no idea, not a clue what to expect going into Episode 9, and I don't think a lot of other people do either. I think we expect some kind of time jump, where Princess Leia is already dead or whatever, maybe it starts with her funeral, something like that, but beyond that, fuck, who knows? And hopefully, because of that, people will just not try and speculate as much. It's the internet, of course they're going to. But just try not to get expectations of certain things happening. Because as we've seen with Episode 8, you're probably not going to be too happy with the result.